Hi Tansy, hi Sarah Jane, and hi Joelle. I wanted to send you guys an update on the work that we've been doing with racism in youth sports, basically basketball here in Berlin. And you've all had the opportunity to look at these emails. And Tansy and I had a really long in depth talk about 2 nights ago, but just to kind of, excuse me, 2 weeks ago, just to kind of catch you up. So since then, I've attended the workshop that the government held about integration in sports. And first of all, the event was held in a former Nazi building at Olympiastadion. Yes, it is called Jesse Owens Avenue. Yes, they have very diverse pictures inside this wonderful um, building, but the bottom line, it is a former Nazi building. So in attendance, there were 55 people in attendance, and three of those people were of color, including myself. I'll be very honest with you. I went alone. I felt a bit, I guess you could say, afraid. Um, so they had the presentation. Remember, our idea or our question was, does racism exist based on what we've read from Anthony and Clear Blue Water? Well, the answer was clearly said at the event was yes, racism exists in sports in Germany, that nothing is being done against it. Yes, there are, they call them Sunday slogans to stop racism, where they actually, have soccer players, famous soccer players, um, come out and say, stop racism before games. They come out and do a little dance and march, stop racism. They wear patches that say stop racism. But in a nutshell, this is all determined to be public relations, and basically players don't have a responsibility to be involved in stop racism campaigns. So answer the question, does racism exist in sports in Germany? The answer was clearly, unequivocally, yes, it does, and it's on the rise. So no more need for investigation from my side. These people made it very clear. Um, and some of the things that happened at the meeting were so overtly racist. For example, there were two presenters. One presenter was white, one presenter was of color. I think he's from India or Pakistan. And during the white person's presentation, which was really an excellent presentation, PowerPoint presentation. At the end of the presentation, he took questions. When the man of color was came up to speak, also from a very well recognized organization, not only in Berlin but in Germany, to stop racism within the country, but from a legal standpoint to litigate in court, he was cut off. I mean, at about, I don't know, 15 minutes into his presentation, he started talking about the experiences that Anthony had, and we all know who Anthony is. He's the reason why we are involved in this question of does racism exist. And they just cut his mic off. And they asked him to change the subject, and then they cut his mic off, and then they did not allow him to take questions. They sent a follow up to the actual meeting. Just this is what happened at the meeting. And in the slide presentation, he's not even a picture of him. There's a picture of the white man who did his presentation, but no picture of the man of color. There was a tiny little mention of him in one of the slides that they created. The slides after the meeting was over, it was all so overtly racist. And I had shared this with Tansy. I was petrified. I mean, when the meeting was at halftime, it was time to go and eat a sandwich. I left. I mean, it's dark. You're in, an area of town where no one in that area looks like me. You're in a former Nazi building, and I thought, you know what? The first train that comes through here, I'm getting on it. I don't even care if it's going my direction. I just want to get out of this area and get into an area where I would feel safe. But it's also interesting to note this event was held at night in this off of the road area in a former Nazi building. So is that why no people of color showed up? I don't know, maybe. So moving on. I had the opportunity to kind of sit back and review some notes and talk to some other people in human rights law and deciding, what do we do? I did some research that I'll send you guys the notes on my research about, what is being done for racism in sports, or to stop racism in sports. And I found some information. And you all know and remember that we work with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and I was able to identify that the country has signed on in an initiative that highlights the Sustainable Development Goals, ending racism in sports in Berlin in particularly. So I'll send you guys that information. Yesterday, I had a meeting with Dr. Serena Wilpert. And just so to give you an update on who she is, Dr. Wilpert is the person who actually created diversity training in Berlin maybe 30 years ago. And she's written books and done coaching at the highest levels of the German government and the German school systems. And I really wanted to sit down and talk with her and ask her, was able to ask her this question. Of all the film, I know, Sarah Jane, you've also reviewed the film, of all the film that we see with Anthony and the young people, of all the interviews, that they never talk about racism. And my question to Dr. Wilpert was, if we know racism exists, why is it that when young people are interviewed, young people of color, when they're interviewed and they're asked the challenges that they face, why do they never identify racism or discrimination as one of the challenges that they face? I mean, Sarah Jane, you probably remember this from the tapes where the young people are interviewed with the sports team from Chicago. You know, what do you see in Berlin? What do you like? How do you compare it to Chicago? They never mention anything about racial discrimination. So I was able to talk to Dr. Wilpert and ask her, what are we missing here? What's the situation? Are the adults just thinking that they are being discriminated against and the kids don't see anything? And she said, no, that these young people live in such a discriminative situation that they don't even notice it anymore. She said, first of all, the people who are being discriminated have already been told you don't belong from the time they enter school all the way through. If any of you know the story of Ozul, I know, Joelle, that you'll know it, that, you know, people of Turkish descent, Kurdish descent that came here as guest workers, first generation, I mean, they and their children were told, you know, you're not German, but then you need to act German. You can't go to school, or you can't get a higher education, you can't get a better job because you don't belong here. And not only do you not belong here, we're not going to help you rise to the level that we are. Yes, there have been some exceptions. But anyway, I don't want to get too much of a segue. So basically what she said was the reason why these young people don't identify certain acts as discriminatory acts or racist acts is because they live it. And I don't know if I sent it to you all, but there was a newspaper article that came out. I posted it on my Facebook page. Joelle, I know I sent it to you on the 16th of November, and there was a study done on racial discrimination in the Berlin school systems, and it was so, sad that, yes, there is discrimination in the school systems, and I think over, is it 70% or 80% of the discrimination comes from adults to the child. So it's not a 13-year-old and a 13-year-old discriminating against each other. It's the teachers and the coaches and any adult discriminating against these kids of color, which was shocking to me when these are supposed to be the role models. So we asked the question now, where do we go from here? Now we know it exists. Now we know these young people, for some reason, aren't acknowledging it. How do we move forward? So I know Sarah Jane and Joelle, you guys have both experienced the workshops or aware of the workshops that we do with young people, but it's always been education for employment. Tansy, you and I discussed having the young people come together and create a video that says, this is what I experienced when I played sports in Berlin. The question that we have to answer is, how do we bring these young people together? How do we bring young people together from the sports world to host a workshop to identify racism using the Millennium Development Goals, to identify racism and create a solution? The Sustainable Development Goals. using the Sustainable Development Goals as our umbrella to identify that racism is happening in sports and how can these young people bring about solution. So that's kind of where we are now. Dr. Wilpert and I talked about um, professionals who could facilitate such a workshop for us sometime next year, people that do this for a living, if you will. Um, and kind of at a point now where we are, figuring out how to go forward with this information. So I don't want to keep you guys too long. It's already been 10 minutes. So number one, does racism exist? Yes, it does. Who are the people who are being racist against the children? It is the adults, and the children don't seem to see it, or they just accept it because of the history of racism in Germany. And not only does it exist, it is on the rise. So we have to do something about it. You guys, I'm going to send you some paperwork on some research that I've done about it, and I'd like for us to look at hosting a 2-day workshop sometime next year. Okay, thank you for your support. Thank you for your help. All right, bye-bye.